Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Silver Years. My name is DK, and I'm very happy to be here, and I humbly thank you for joining me. All right, today is a new segment of My Story Time. Now, My Story Time is where I tell my story, unscripted, as a way to counter the ever changing official narrative of history, his story. Because no one, not even AI, can tell my life story as a direct reflection of the times in which I lived better than me. And this is where I'm telling it. Now, the story that wants to be told today is coming in from 1979, 1980, and it begins in Lakewood, Colorado, not long after I turned 21 years old. Now, after turning 21, I got to change my driver's license in Colorado. I can't remember if the requirements at the time, you either had a profile picture, but they had markings all over your driver's license if you were under 21 and considered a minor or unable to drink or whatever. So when I turned 21, I got access to a driver's license that was official. And at the time, I was living in Lakewood. I was married to my first husband. I had, my first daughter. She was young. And my sister number two, was living with me. Now, sister number two decided that she wanted to get a job at a server at one of these local, it was a local, I don't know if you'd call it a bar, but it was a venue that had it was a bar venue, but they had music and other things, and she wasn't old enough because I was the oldest, and my four sisters, which I've talked about in previous videos, were stacked behind me a year or two at a time. So I think between my age and the youngest might have been 6 year gap. So the sister under me was a year younger than me, and she wanted to work as a server in this institute or in this establishment, and didn't have the license to qualify to be a server of alcohol. And so we devised a plan. So what we did in Colorado, she would go, I would, what we did, how we handled it was basically to say that I lost my driver's license. She went into the DMV as me, and they took a new picture because this was in the late 70s, early 80s, and they did not have databases at the same that they do now, so they can't pull an old photo to compare. So she went in and would get her picture taken, and she ended up with a driver's license with my name and all of my data, her picture. So at that point, there were two of me walking around with driver's license that had the same information, only my picture would have been correct. But she used that fake ID to get that job, and ultimately that's where she met her husband and ended up having two kids and yada yada. So it was what it was, but that fake ID served to allow her to get employment and move on with her life. Well, shortly after that, the rest of our sisters would come to visit. Now, I think the following year I had three of them came to visit between Christmas and New Year's, and we decided we wanted to go out on New Year's Eve and celebrate. Well, I mean, that is not anything I would care to do today, but when you're young and full of a lot, you're going to go out and have a good time, right? So, what we did, I mean, what ultimately what happened is every one of my sisters at some point in time got a fake ID, went into the DMV, got their picture taken, and got a fake ID with my information in their photo. So there was a point in time when there were five of me, but only one real one walking around. So all my and we, so we used those IDs on New Year's Eve for probably 2, 3 years when they'd come to visit, to go to the nightclubs in Glendale on New Year's Eve and just have a good time, which we did do. We would sit around my table before going out, at eight or nine at night, and just catch up and chat. In fact, one of those times sitting around the table was when I found out I had a brother that I didn't know. He was raised as our uncle, but one of my sisters casually remarked, something about our brother being, or our uncle being our brother. Some, and I stopped and went, "What?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, you weren't there." Well, he announced it at Thanksgiving. Well, he had been told he was adopted, and he went on a quest to find his adopted parents. Everything was so secretive because my mother was from the silent generation, and her mother was worse. And so nobody ever told this poor boy anything. And when he got to be 18, he just went on a quest. And so at some point in time, somebody had to admit that our mother was his mother. And I didn't know. So that kind of blew my mind. But at the end of the day, it was fine. He he was raised as part of our family, but he just had a different role. Anyway, so at some stage, we had five of us with these fake IDs, and we utilized them for going out together and enjoying things that we couldn't enjoy if everyone wasn't 21. So fast forward a year or two, the sister number two who lived with me, who met her husband using my fake ID, got married, and they planned their wedding. It was a Las Vegas wedding, and so the whole family came, and we met in Las Vegas. And there was a moment when all five of us, were at a slot machine playing. And of course, our youngest sister, the younger ones, looked really young. They were they were young. They were not old enough, definitely, to be at a slot machine according to the laws in place. So, but everybody had their fake IDs. So we were playing at a slot machine, and it started winning, and we were hooping and hollering and having a good time with the win, which of course attracted the attention of security on the floor, who then started hovering and surrounding. So we were approached by someone who demanded to see everybody's IDs. Okay, and I had a nail biting moment for a minute because I we all had the same name, and we all had the same birthday, and oh my god, it was so easy to get busted. But that guy pulled everybody's IDs, who quick, everybody handed it over, and he went through each one, and he saw the picture, and he saw the birthday. So everybody was old enough, but it never came out, or it never dawned on him that we all have the same birthday. Okay, the pictures were right. Never looked at the name, the birthdays. I I'm still amazed that that was the extent of it. And then he walked away because everybody had legitimate IDs with birthdays that supported an age over 21, and there was nothing else to say. And so but we decided that we would be better off dispersing and not being together in a clump. And that was that. Anyway, we enjoyed the rest of our time in Las Vegas, and everybody did what they were going to do with no limitations because everybody had the ID to support their legitimacy to be on the floor, um, as being over 21. So I can I look back at it today and I think, well, you couldn't do that today. I mean, it would be impossible to do that today with the systems that they have in place today. Not that they're so highly sophisticated, but the picture, just everything, it just amazes me that we were able to do that. But we did have a time, of course, everybody eventually became 21, and everybody had their own legitimate, so the license expired and everything went on, and it was just for a few years period of time, and everybody used them. I imagine maximized their use of them when they weren't with us in Colorado, because they all would come in from California to visit. Um, and and I look back on that and I kind of smile about it. But would it be something that I would, a proud moment? Maybe not. But it did provide some socializing aspects and some bonding moments that were fun and created some good memories. So I'm going to say it wasn't all bad. Um, but it's not something that I would be a proponent of perhaps today. But I think my whole point in remembering this little point in my story, okay, because it did happen. I mean, we all have stories that maybe we're not so proud of today, but they do make up who we are and why we are the way we are today, and good, bad, or indifferent. We all do things, and when you're young too, especially, you realize that in order to get anywhere, you've got to. I mean, so many examples. You've got to be non-compliant. You have to work around the system. If you obey all the rules and jump through all the hoops and do it, you get nowhere. You get at the end of the day and you're unfulfilled, and there's nothing. So I think my biggest takeaway from this is that um, it's just breaking the rules. It's about breaking the rules, and this time we broke the rules times five, and it was fun and it worked, and it created a lot of good bonding memories. But it's just another example of how, in order to get anywhere, we have to break the rules. I don't make the rules, and I understand some of the rules are in place for everyone's protection and safety, but I don't need people telling me, the government telling me what I need to be protected and safe. I think that I would rather listen to someone who's lived it to give me advice on how to protect myself better and be safe than I do having the government establish a rule and a law telling me what I need to do to be compliant. Um, and and I guess that's just the divergent aspect in me, the rebel who just doesn't want to comply. And but I understand from a social level, we do comply. We obey because we don't want chaos and social disorder and all that. So two sides to it, but there are always exceptions to the rule. And I think that it's looking for the workarounds, looking for the cracks to go through, or the gaps in between, in order to make adjustments that suit us on a personal level, are worth exploring. And at the end of the day, I think that's just what this little story is about, because I've been on a non compliant role. So this is just an example of it, for whatever it's worth. Um, but in the end, I'm going to say, in conclusion, and for whatever it's worth, this is just my little protest against his story. This is me telling my story, my way, for the record, and it's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I would love to hear your stories as well, so please feel free to share your stories in the comments. So until next time, be well, choose love, and thank you. Thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.